An invite to try out the 2018 Beta 4-strokes? Cool. I actually don't take too much interest in new models usually, but the Beta PR team said there have been plenty of changes. And having ridden them now, I reckon these are good changes. So we'll look at the changes first, then the individual bikes. All of the 4-strokes have lost a massive 5.3 kilograms, mainly through a lighter engine, redesigned frame and lithium battery. Personally, I've never worried about weight too much, but all the bikes feel considerably lighter in hard terrain and more flickable in cornering. Beta clutches have traditionally been a bit heavier than other brands. They've finally opted for a new, lighter clutch. I do a lot of clutch slipping and these middle-aged fingers would ache after an hour or two with a stock Beta clutch. But the 2018 clutch has a much nicer, easier pull. 4-stroke engines have all been tweaked, with probably the biggest change being a dual fuel injector system. Apparently it's increased power across the rev range, but I mainly noticed that there was some extra low-down grunt on all the models, which has in effect made the power even more linear than it was. It will be interesting to see if it increases the fuel range as well. The snappy response from idle with the fuel injection also seems to have mellowed a lot this year. I remember buying a G2 throttle tamer for my RR480 a few years back, but I seriously doubt I'd need one now. For me, the biggest change to the engine characteristics is that mapping switch. In the past, I've found most mapping switches simply didn't make much difference. But you throw this into rain mode and all the engines become very docile and tractable at lower revs. All the models will still wheelie like mad once you wind the revs up though, which is handy if you are riding in mud but occasionally get some good grip. To me, these were the differences that really stood out. But there are other things. Beta says the new frame has less flexing, but I can't ride hard or well enough to tell. Ditto with the suspension. There are minor changes, but I think Beta dialed in the SARC suspension well for Gumbies since 2015, and it's all felt great since then. There's a new gear shift selector. I've occasionally hit false neutrals on earlier models, so maybe this has cured it now. I certainly hit no false neutral in a full day's riding. What else? A new airbox, skid plate and Takasago wheels. The Japanese rims have a good reputation, so that certainly can't hurt. So let's look at the individual models starting with the RR350. While it is lighter and has more low-end power, it has the same characteristics as last year's RR350. It's essentially the same weight as its bigger brothers, but less reciprocating mass does mean you can throw it around in corners a lot more. Surprisingly grunty, but it really comes alive the more you rev it. For more details, see our old RR350 review. For 2018, the RR390 has really changed. The longer stroke engine always made the 390 an extremely tractable bike with very predictable power. But I suspect this dual fuel injection system has really woken her up. I found the 2018 model revs up much faster and was keen to spin the rear wheel if I got into the throttle too much. But then I put her on the rain map and she was back to the thumper I remembered that could lug up hills so easily. More than any other model, this felt like two completely different beasts with the mapping switch. Like last year, the RR430 is a real weapon if you hit that throttle too hard. Surprisingly, the new engine has almost the same low-down grunt of the old 480, and it's still tractable when you're easy on the throttle, but certainly spins up faster when you crack it. RR480 felt the least changed. Yes, the lighter weight is noticeable in slower terrain, but the beast makes so much power already that it's hard to really feel the increase this year. It's still the gentle giant and won't give any nasty surprises unless you are ham-fisted on the throttle. Personally, I'd like to see Beta develop the 480 into more of a dual sport or light adventure bike mode. It's such a good engine for dirt and road work. What's not to like? The good news is the Beta crew haven't been resting on their laurels and they keep fixing niggling issues over the years. But what haven't they fixed yet? That pointy-ended side stand. It's always funny watching parked Betas topple one by one when in soft soil. Most of us screw a little base plate on to fix it. The shape of Beta fenders means they tend to break instead of bending. The only good news is that, as with most parts, Beta plastics are incredibly cheap compared to most other manufacturers. Some will still want a Kickstarter, and you can order this. Personally, I think the Beta starter motors are so reliable, and there's always bump starting or other techniques even if you're stranded in the bottom of a gully. The oil pump gears are still made of plastic and need replacing at 100 hours. Look, you normally should be checking your clutch around that point anyway, so it's an easy job to replace and cheap. But some owners put in the steel replacements made by Buono, so they can forget about it. So there you have it. As with any bike, get a test ride if you can. Sometimes you can watch a pile of reviews and think you've found your perfect bike, but then go for a ride and not gel with the bike at all. But I think these latest Italian beasts do tick the boxes for a lot of guys, judging by the positive comments that were flying around on this Beta Ride Day.